to move on to the second phase. We really want that to happen. Ireland's trading relationship with Britain is enormous, and of course we want to have a new trade arrangement. But we should never forget that Brexit is a British policy. It's one that Britain has imposed on the rest of Europe. It's causing enormous difficulties for all of Europe and Ireland in particular. And to me it seems that after 40 years of marriage, most of them good, Britain now wants a divorce and wants an open relationship the day after, and that's a very difficult position to accept. But I'm sure we'll work something out.
And would Ireland be willing potentially to veto moving on to those next round of negotiations in December if you're not satisfied? It doesn't sound like you're satisfied right now.
Oh, look, I'm not in the business of threatening vetoes. I don't think that would be a constructive way to come to an agreement, and we do want to come to an agreement. But we have a national interest here at stake. Our island was partitioned 100 years ago. We spent 100 years trying to bring people together, and the Good Friday Agreement was crucial to that. There's a political border on our island between north and south, but there isn't any trade border. You know, people cross freely, cross-border workers trade every day, and it would be very difficult for us to accept anything short of a written commitment that the British government means what it says. And the British government has said that there will be no hard border on the island of Ireland, that there'll be no return to the borders of the past, that there'll be no physical infrastructure. We welcome those commitments. But after 18 months, it's 18 months since the referendum, 10 years since people started agitating for it, we've yet to see anything written down in black and white in law that we can say honours that promise that Britain has made.
And just finally, so you say you want something written down. What would that look like? And has the British government produced anything, as far as you're concerned, which would meet that requirement that there would not be a hard border after Brexit Day?
Well, there are proposals going back and forth, and I very much welcome the engagement from the British government. But like I say, if we're serious about the commitment, and if the British government is serious about their commitment to ensuring that there is no hard border, no physical infrastructure on the border between Northern Ireland and Ireland, we need a clear legal understanding as to how that can be achieved. You know, it is 18 months since the referendum, and
so a separate legal understanding, something the British government would publish independently of these negotiations, an assurance for Ireland, effectively.
No, it doesn't need to be separate. You know, Ireland is one of 27 member states. We are part of Europe's negotiating team. We're negotiating with the strength of 27 states, 26 member states behind us, 400 million people. We're in a very strong position here. And the position that we hold is one that's held by the 27 states that are remaining. And Britain has decided to leave the European Union. We respect that. But we're not willing to allow enormous damage to be done to the day-to-day normal lives of people who live in Ireland and our businesses. And that needs to be resolved.
Well, Lewis, our political correspondent, has the latest now from Gothenburg.
Worth bearing in mind that we were coming here today, Theresa May expected to make some noises to suggest that in fact Britain would be willing to pay 10 or 20 or 30 billion euros, perhaps. It all gets a bit silly money when you get to that level, doesn't it? But in order to pay the Brexit bill and move those negotiations on in December to trade negotiations, instead of being stuck on these issues around money and on Ireland and on citizens' rights. And yet that wasn't the mood music at all today. Instead, what we've essentially ended up spending much of the day talking about a problem for Theresa May, which is much closer to home, that of Ireland. And I think that is a much more intractable one in many ways for Theresa May, because of course the Prime Minister, leader of the fifth biggest economy in the world, £1.5 trillion economy, ultimately, if the difference between getting a trade deal and not getting a trade deal, or even to get those an opportunity to speak and negotiate a trade deal, if the difference was, say, 10 billion euros or 15 billion euros, Theresa May would pay it, because the political prize of getting those trade discussions going is so glittering. What is much harder to write a cheque for or to wave a magic wand and make go away is the issue of Ireland and the issue of a hard border between North and South. She can't do that. And what did the Prime Minister of Ireland tell me there? He doesn't think they're anywhere close to having a deal on the border or, by the way, on the financial settlement. Really, I think, in many ways, quite devastating for the government. He also told me that he thought that there needed to be, as you saw there, a written declaration, a legal guarantee from the government that there wouldn't be a hard border border between North and South. The problem with that is, how do you ensure there's no hard border between North and South? The best way of doing it would be to stay in the customs union and stay in the single market, effectively have regulatory equivalence on both sides. That simply isn't acceptable to the Conservative MPs on Theresa May's backbenches. So what do you have? A total impasse, almost back to where we started. It hasn't all just been about Ireland. We did start the day, as I say, trying to talk a little bit about the financial settlement. Theresa May didn't even have to be at this conference today, it's worth bearing in mind. This isn't a conference which is about Brexit. It's one that's held by the request of the Swedish government to talk about employment rights and trying to boost employment throughout the Eurozone mainly. So perhaps you wouldn't imagine seeing a British Prime Minister here normally, but she came here to try and build some bridges and mend some fences and try and make some allies of the smaller and medium-sized European states, not least, of course, Sweden, but also Poland and a few others. So quite ironic that we ended up having so much of a problem with the small European state that is closest to us, Ireland. But nonetheless, she has been talking to other European leaders. The Prime Minister says there's been some progress. European Council President Donald Tusk, not so certain. Take a look at this.
We are agreed that good progress has been made, that there is more to be done, but we should move forward together towards that point where sufficient progress can be declared, and we can look ahead to what I have already said I want to see as a deep and special and comprehensive partnership between the UK and the remaining 27 members of the European Union. Thank you.
While good progress on citizens' rights is being made, we need to see much more progress on Ireland and on a financial settlement. In order to avoid any ambiguities about our work calendar, I made it very clear to the Prime Minister May that this progress needs to happen at the beginning of December